Kelly, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Good morning, Kristen.
It's great to have you back. I do have to start again on this tragic news about this plane crash here in the nation's capital. You, of course, have flown combat missions as a Navy pilot. You just heard my conversation with Senator Schmidt responding to what we heard from President Trump this week, that diversity programs, according to the president, may have played a role. The president acknowledging he does not have proof of that. What is your take on what we know and what you've heard?
Well, Kristen, first, it's a tragic and sad accident. I really feel for the families on the plane, on the helicopter. It's, these accidents are all often very complicated, a set of things that happen sequentially. It's often not one thing that causes a major aviation accident like this. I've been involved in accident investigations, particularly like with Space Shuttle Columbia, as an example that we lost in 2003. And to say that it has to do with the person's color of their skin or their gender, I think that's just poor leadership. And especially at a time where any president is supposed to be the consoler in chief and not the person that's going to try to divide us as a country, especially when you don't have the appropriate information. And he clearly does not have the information in this case. This is too early in the investigation. The NTSB is really good at this. They'll do a thorough investigation and we'll eventually see what the cause of this accident was.
Yeah, and they are still investigating, that is for sure. Let's shift to the other big news of this morning. The president's announcement on tariffs on the country's three biggest trading partners. You heard Senator Schmidt defending the plan. You heard Secretary Noem defending the plan as well, saying ultimately this will be good for the economy, rejecting the idea that it could drive up prices. Do you think, as President Trump has argued, that tariffs ultimately will be good at stemming the flow of illegal immigration and fentanyl?
Kristen, we're talking about two different things here. Border security is important. I represent Arizona. We're a border state. There are things that we can do to strengthen the border. We've demonstrated that Democrats and Republicans can work together to come up with real policy solutions. What the president has proposed here, raising tariffs on Canada and Mexico, it's going to just do one thing. You say it may raise prices. It will raise prices for American consumers. We saw this in his first administration here in Arizona. We wound up in a trade war over certain things with China for cotton producers and pecan farmers. They wound up, it really, really hurt their businesses. But, beyond this, it's going to hurt American families. They're going to see prices go up for food, for energy, for electronics. I think you mentioned that for autos. This is not the way to handle this.
I do want to turn to the nomination process. Tulsi Gabbard in the spotlight this week. You were among those asking her a range of different questions during her confirmation hearing. She is a former Democratic lawmaker. We should remind folks of that. She ran for president in the Democratic Party. Notably, you have supported all but two of Mr. Trump's nominees so far, but you've expressed some real concerns about Tulsi Gabbard. Based on your conversations, do you think Tulsi Gabbard has the votes to get confirmed?
Well, I think anybody who went into that confirmation hearing this week with questions about, her background, her ability to manage 18 intelligence agencies, and also her commitment to guard our secrets. As the director of national intelligence, she's responsible for a lot. She's got to sort through a massive amount of information every single day, decide what to present to the president. I think if you had questions about her decision-making and her judgment when you went into that hearing, I think anybody that sat there like I did or my colleagues on both sides of the aisle probably left with more questions. I know I did. You played Senator Lankford's exchange with her over whether or not Edward Snowden was a traitor. It's a pretty simple question to ask. He actually thought he was throwing her a softball, something she could easily, admit to. I mean, the definition of a traitor is pretty simple. I mean, whether or not somebody betrayed our country, and in the case of Edward Snowden, we know he did. He released a lot of classified information, top secret information, over 1 million documents, and he gave a lot of those to Russia. He may have given some to China. He meets the definition. I don't see why she couldn't, say that. I'm kind of puzzled by it, and I don't know why she wouldn't admit that. It's interesting. My friend and colleague Eric Schmidt wouldn't either. I don't question his judgment on this. I think this is a very political situation. But I think my Republican colleagues, many of them, will still have questions about her nomination.
All right. Well, we'll have to see how it all plays out. It will be obviously a dynamic several days as we wait to see what happens with her vote, whether she gets out of committee. Sources who are close to her say they do feel confident she will. I do want to talk about the president's mass deportation plans. You heard from Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem earlier in the broadcast. ICE operations are already being carried out across the country. You have pushed for tougher standards, tougher border policies. Do you support what you are seeing so far, the deportation plan as it's been carried out by the president?
Yeah, I don't, for a number of reasons. It seems to be more about intimidation of a big population of people. It's going down the road of mass deportation, which he said he would do, which would rip communities apart. These are really bad ideas. Trying to send folks back to Colombia, which we do routinely, but sending them on military airplanes, which, by the way, costs a lot more money than putting them on a chartered airline flight, which we've done for decades. It's all about scaring and intimidating people. It's the same thing for Guantanamo Bay. Building a facility there is because it just sounds very frightening to a lot of folks. When you're a criminal, we need to find where you are, and we need to take you into custody. And if you're not documented, you should be returned. That makes sense. I'm all about public safety and border security, but we've got to do it in a way in accordance with our values.
One more question to you, Senator. President Trump obviously signed the Laken Riley Act into law this week, just so folks understand. That will allow law enforcement to detain and to deport undocumented immigrants who've been charged with theft-related crimes. You voted in support of this bill. I had an opportunity to interview your colleague, Senator Adam Schiff, who opposed it. He told me last week this bill is so broad the U.S., quote, would be able to deport dreamers for taking a tube of toothpaste. Can you guarantee this law won't be applied in a way that's overly broad?
Well, this law is about public safety. Representing a border state, this affects Arizona, I think, more than other states just because of, numbers, and it's where, folks cross. Kristen, if you come across the border and you don't have documentation, you've already committed a crime. This is for somebody who then decides to commit a second crime. And they're taken into custody. There'll be due process involved, so they could eventually, if they can prove that these are not valid charges, or they go through the court system, they could then be released. I'm not concerned about, what Adam is talking about. I think, very highly of Dreamers. Dreamers are as American as my own two kids. I think we should be working towards a pathway to citizenship for Dreamers. I know some of my Republican colleagues feel the same way. And we're going to solve these border issues by working together, Democrats and Republicans, to come up with policy changes on border security and immigration reform.
All right. Senator Kelly, thank you so much for joining us.